Hi, everybody. You're all very welcome to this session, which is just follows on nicely from what Gilly did there, the Embracing Sustainable Development Goals. As I hold a piece of paper in my hand, probably not the most sustainable. Okay, so thank you all for coming here. As I said, this is the Embracing the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 4 speakers from a number of different institutions. So what I'll do is I'll just allow the speakers to introduce themselves. So if you say who you are, where you're from, and what your title of your presentation is. We're allowed 15 minutes per presentation. I'm going to be fairly strict on that, ruthless maybe. And I'll give you, those of you speaking, I'll give you a 2-minute warning just as you're coming towards the 15 minutes. We'll allow 5 minutes then for Q&A. As I said, we have 4 speakers, so we want to keep it fairly tight. So first up then is, as I said, I won't be introducing each one. I'll let each, as I said, introduce themselves. But the first one, Mark Kelly, John Scahill, and Sean Duffy from ATU.
So good afternoon, everybody, and it's great to be here at this conference. So my name is John Scahill, and I'm going to be presenting on the Sustainable Development Goals and some of the work that we've done in ATU in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals. My colleague, Dr. Sean Duffy, is going to be delivering the second part of our presentation here, where he's going to go into some detail on what we've done on a digital badge that we've developed on education for sustainability. So it's 15 minutes, and I think we'll be able to keep within the 15 minutes handily. So we're going to do a short introduction to the SDGs, their role in higher education, and maybe we might touch on a few ways how we can help to embrace the SDGs in our teaching and learning. So the 3 people responsible for putting this presentation together are Dr. Mark Kelly, who's the head of the Centre for Sustainability in the Galway Mayo Centre for Sustainability. Mark unfortunately can't make it today. I work in the Mayo campus and also in the Galway campus. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Building and Civil Engineering in Galway. And I'm also an academic developer on the N-Tutor project, which Corinne is leading out on. Dr. Sean Duffy is a learning technologist based in the Galway Teaching and Learning Centre. So today, we're just briefly going to go over the SDGs, some of the offerings that we have in relation to the SDGs. One of them is a 20-credit program, which I will talk about. We've also got a 10-credit level 9 certificate in education for sustainability, which has been offered for a number of years. And I see a few people here who've actually done it. And then Sean will talk to us about the digital badge, introducing education for sustainability, which is an intervention that or a digital badge that we've developed in conjunction with a number of other higher education institutions. So I'm kind of hoping that everybody in the room has actually heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, and if you haven't, where have you been? Because I'd like to know where that place is actually. So I think everybody knows of them. Interestingly, I've been attending a lot of meetings recently with educational leaders and academic leaders, and the terminology around the SDGs is widespread. People use it a lot, but I have discovered that while most people know there's 17 of them, most people couldn't actually name them all. Fair enough. But if they can't name them, and they wouldn't know there's maybe 169 goals and 232 indicators, the level of actual knowledge of the SDGs is very general. So that's one of the things we looked at and one of the reasons we developed the program that we have. A lot of people rely on them, and I think they use them because they do provide a fantastic framework. You know, there's 17 different lenses through which you can look at sustainability. And while they're not perfect, they are a really good framework, and they give you an opportunity to explore. Certainly, from an academic point of view, all disciplines can be viewed through the lenses. They're an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. So that's, I think, one of the amazing things about them is that you got 193 countries to actually agree to these goals. And they recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health, education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change. So you can see there's a lot of themes there. They're often reduced to the 3 themes of people, planet, and prosperity. And of course, there are a number of cynics about the SDGs. they're wondering how sustainable any kind of model is that actually is spurring economic growth. Again, that's a debate for economists and philosophers. We'll just stick here to simple education. They were introduced in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and that builds on years of work by the UN. So there's 17 goals, 169 targets, and 232 indicators. For anyone who isn't quite, I'll just briefly run through them. Poverty is one, hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, possibly the most contentious of all of them. A few of them I don't think anyone argues with, no poverty and no hunger. Reduced inequalities, I don't think you're going to find a lot of arguments there. Sustainable cities either. Responsible consumption and production, while there's not many arguments about it, how that's envisaged and carried out is quite problematic. Climate action, interestingly, one of the two goals, along with renewable energy, that have the minimum amount of targets, because I suspect they found it very difficult to agree on targets on fundamental issues like climate change and energy. Life below water, life on land, peace and partnership. So why have we looked at them in educational terms? Well, there is a national strategy in place, or the Sustainable Development Goals National Implementation Plan is 2018 to 2021. There is also a plan in place for 2022 to 2024. So it's a government initiative, and it's a government target and aim to comply and meet the Sustainable Development Goals and their targets up to 2030. Now, one of the criticisms you sometimes hear about them is that, they're to 2030. What's going to happen then? Are they going to change? From what I can gather, there's going to be, there's thought that they are working currently on a version. They are developing them. I think they're probably going to stay somewhere in line, and even if there are some modifications, a lot of the lenses that are here aren't going to disappear. They might have to realign a bit, but a lot of the framework that's set up is getting fairly good buy-in from, locally, nationally, internationally, and the UN. I think that there's a lot. If you look at the website, you'll find there's a huge amount of data there, recording and tracking how each country is getting on with each of the SDGs. So there's a lot of buy-in for them. In terms of our own strategy, in terms of education, there's the National Strategy for Education for Sustainable Development. We're now in the second stage of that. There's a number of priority areas there. Obviously, advancing policy, transforming the learning environments that we're in, building capacity for educators. So I think I'll give the N-Tutor project a plug here. That's one of the fundamental work streams in that. So building the capacity for educators is also a priority action area for the ESD implementation plan. There's a number of ways you can look at embedding sustainability. You've got whole institution approaches. There's interdisciplinary research that's involved as well. Campus-wide sustainability literature. There's a lot of approaches you can take to trying to embed sustainability, and a lot of aspects to it. The approach that we're looking in this particular presentation, we're going to look at how it can be embedded in particular programs. So I'm just going to talk for a minute or two on a program that we've developed recently under the Higher Ed 4, the HCI Pillar 3 Higher Ed 4 funded project. It's a special purpose award in the Sustainable Development Goals, Partnership, People, Planet and Prosperity. Now, we're taking some of the material that we developed in this, and we're using that as part to develop some digital badges, which we're going to use in the N-Tutor project as well. The reason we developed this particular program was we felt that there was no program sort of addressing the goals directly like this, and there was no program addressing the goals in an Irish context. So this is focused on the Irish context. We designed it at level 6 because we felt that it could be truly interdisciplinary at that stage. Of course, it could be level 8, but at level 6, obviously it's less demanding, and there's no requirement for particular disciplinary specializations. So the overall idea of the program is that a student from any discipline can undertake this and do it in addition to their primary degree. It's 20 credits at level 6, and it can be done over a number of years. There's 4 or 5 credit modules in it with 4 different themes. Partnership being the first one. You have to undertake the partnership module initially to actually complete the rest of the modules. It's fully online. There's a number, I think there's a number of innovative assessments and developments in it. It has a fantastic instructional design team from the Higher Ed 4 project. We have Francis O'Donnell and David Chernick, who is now working on the N-Tutor project as well. And they were fundamental in, I suppose, developing really high quality package that it is. The program is designed in line with the principles of UDL, and there's a digital badge for completion of each of the SDG units. We're also looking at the possibility of developing a MOOC from this. I know we're under time pressure, so I'll just go on to the next module. The next module that I'll talk about is the Education for Sustainability module. It's a level 9, 10 credit module that's part of our MA in Teaching and Learning. I think this is the 5th year that it's been run. It's a very interesting module. It forms part of the potential modules that you can do as part of the MA in Teaching and Learning. And Dermot O'Donovan, Mark Kelly and myself are the co-facilitators in that program. This year, interestingly, as it was pushed under the, or pushed by the N-Tutor project, we actually had 65 or 70 people trying to get on, which meant that we had to kind of rethink it. So we actually took on 25 this year for the first time, and we're going to try and rerun it again in October with 2 cohorts. That's the plan. So we're hoping we'll be able to actually process the whole group that applied, and then maybe next February, because normally we just run it from February to May. We normally have maybe 10, 15 people doing it. But it was interesting that we had people applying from across the N-Tutor sector from a number of different institutions. The next program I'm going to, well, the last bit there is just a little bit about what the module does. It explores how to embed sustainability in the curriculum, and it uses the 5C model: campus, curriculum, community, collaborative research, and can I see the last one? There's another C anyway. So it uses that model, and it's basically 5 2-hour workshops held over 4 months. And we focus on each of the modules as we go. And then there's an assignment at the end where you design a piece of work that demonstrates how you can embed sustainability in your own practice. So the next module, I will hand over to Dr. Daffy, and
thanks, John.
Take a back seat.
Okay, so the digital badge for introducing education for sustainability. It's a fully online course that was run in collaboration there with TU Dublin, UCC, DCU, and ATU. And the idea of this is just a 6-week digital badge for people working, teachers, but also other staff working in higher education, for how to embed, introduce education for sustainability for them. So we can see this is literally the sort of homepage. It's everything from ESD in context to envisioning sustainable futures and futures thinking, to embracing complexity, which is John's specialty, and acting for sustainability. We also had 2 weeks that were optional add-ons where you could become a facilitator of the course. And the idea of this course, a lot of the resources we developed and the ideas around it was that, okay, we showed you resources that were available online, like the climate query here, where we talk about, you know, arguments for, against, and delaying action in climate change. But we also want to develop resources that anyone who was taking the course could take and reuse. So these were all developed using H5P, which is a development tool that uses HTML5. And the idea is there's always a reuse or an embed button in them. So this is a sort of this is an interactive timeline where we go through where we are in relation to climate change and what we need to do. Again, you could just grab that and use it in your course. And that was the idea. Again, another timeline. This was on the Greta effect, how one person protesting can start mitigating and snowballing change. Again, if you like this resource, you could take it, reuse it in your course. So all these kind of resources, a lot of the resources and the activities we use, there's small drag and drop exercises where we were looking at KSAs involved in it, and a more focused long-term one where people would choose their own goal and research it and develop it, and then they'd get their own feedback report on the goal they had researched and what they want to do about it. But again, this is a resource that whoever was taking the course could grab and reuse in their own course. That was almost everything, every activity almost, with the exception of Padlets and things like that, that we designed in the course. They were designed to be able to be grabbed by the participants and reused in their own classroom for their own students. So that was the idea behind a lot of the design in relation to that. So how we ran it was, there was a pre-workshop where you just, we wanted people to be on the same page before they arrived. And then there was a live workshop, which ran for 2 hours. And then they had to get together in peer triads and do an activity for the week. So that was the general framework. And as I say, the whole design of the course was, this was sort of resources you could take and use elsewhere. It wasn't just doing the course. This would provide you with something you could go on straight away and just take and integrate into your course. And hopefully in future, we'll start doing more scaffolding on how you can remix things that we're creating. So I think that's about it. We're good on time. Thanks very much for listening.
I might just say one more thing, just to say how what a great job Sean did on the instructional design on this program as well. And I think ATU are really lucky to have the team of designers they have in Galway, Sligo and Letterkenny working on all the projects. It makes a huge difference, and it's fantastic to see them sharing resources and working together. I think it's fantastic. So, welcome then. Are there any questions?
Friends online.
Get a bit of a mic there.
Okay. What do I do? Right, so do I just speak into this now? So just to hold it, there's no microphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just to say, I really enjoyed the 6-7 weeks of the course, and then the facilitators badge afterwards. It really opened my eyes up to the bigger picture. Indeed, I I wasn't conscious of the SDGs at all in the 3 modules that I prepared. I'll talk about later. But it really, and the facilitators badge has given me now a mandate to go forward to IEDT and to build a plan out. We couldn't have done any of that without. So I just wanted to, I definitely recommend it to everybody here.
I totally agree with that, man. Yeah, we didn't mention that it is actually a National Forum funded badge. So it was developed, I suppose, in almost in the model of the UDL badge, which now an awful lot of people have done, and we're hoping that this will get the same traction. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Gráinne Carl and I'm a lecturer in IADT, and I'm going to talk to you about a project I was involved in the applied psychology degree in IADT. The module is called Applied Psychology in Practice, and what's interesting about the applied psychology degree is that it has 2 paths. It's got a tech path and a practice path. And usually they share a lot of common modules, but they have some separate modules that they use. And then in this particular module, they work together to apply these both these paths. It's team thought, so I taught this with 3 other colleagues, Dr. John Greeny, Robert Griffin, and Timothy McNichols. So, on the topic of sustainable goals, we obviously every year we have to come up with an idea for a project, and this year we really thought it would be a perfect topic, the UN Sustainable Goals, just to get the students to have a look at overarching societal goals, and really, they are perfect candidate and a perfect opportunity for a project. Obviously there is a tech element to it, but we did not enforce it as it has to be a tech-based project, but obviously a lot of projects ended up having a tech element to them. But, you know, there were some suggestions of directions they could go in, for example, sensory rooms, incorporating the maker movement, the sharing economy, social media campaigns, gamification, web design, app design, augmented virtual reality. But UDL principle, multiple means of engagement, was very much at the back of our heads, you know, that they had choice in their topic and in what they would do. So obviously, the students coming from the tech path would have a foundation in user experience, and we had, it was very much user-centered, the process or design process, iterative. So, you know, following this path of doing your research, user being the center of your research, empathizing with the user, defining your problem, ideating, prototyping, testing. And obviously, these are psychology students, so we were ensuring that there was an aspect of ethical approval. They had to achieve some form of ethical approval on their topic before they could proceed. It was amber ethical route, so there were certain things or groups that they could not interview or use. So our research approach was to use the Miro. So this was kind of their platform where they brought all their ideas together. They kept it open and transformative or transparent, and they could brainstorm here, putting together their personas, their storyboards, their all of the research, putting it all there, very visible, so that we as lecturers could go in at any time and see what was going on and see who was doing what. Empathy maps, user journeys, all those different tools were used in the process to get the ideas going. And then our timeline, you can see here, it's a full year, academic year. So they were given the project idea within the first month in September. One thing I forgot to mention is it's group-based. So there were groups involved. So they were involved in the research. Obviously, psychology, emphasis was on psychology research and the impact of this. So by October, they were looking at user groups, developing personas, creating empathy maps, user journeys, getting ethical approval, and then creating some low fidelity prototypes. And then by December, we had an interim presentation where they got their feedback and we saw where everybody was. And then moving on to high fidelity prototypes in the new year, and then based on that, user testing, responding to the user tests, and then deliverable website and final presentations. The key deliverable was an actual project website, so they used Wix to put all their ideas together. This had to incorporate their solution, their research, their design process, the ethical considerations, a bit about themselves, and supporting documentation. And these are just example websites that were produced, so you can see here in the middle. You know, it's a nice way to present a project. You know, they have the whole thing almost like selling it like a product. So they show their research, their solutions to development, the ethics, the team, and everybody had their own way of doing it, but really, really nice way of presenting their content. So getting onto the actual products that were developed, this is just a selection of ones that were produced. The ones that are in orange are the ones I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail. But you can see that there was something looking at resource for apps, a food resource app, a sensory room for neurodivergent students, a decider skill resource. So this was kind of using the mindfulness approach in primary schools, where you have a lot of material, but you know, the supporting material like websites and videos and all kinds of things. So they decided to bring it all together in some kind of a website. Sea swimming app, an app for Erasmus students. So lots of different types, but you can see there's probably a dominance of web of apps. But the ones I'm going to show you, there's a little bit of variety. So I'm just pointing out to you here the sustainable goal that was targeted with each one of them. And this one is called Plant Paradise. And the students there that were involved are listed at the bottom. So they get a little bit of, oh, well, they did all the work. I'm just highlighting what they did. So this one was an environmental learning game. It was a tablet-based game. It was for primary school kids, nice and fun, interactive environment. Basically, research has shown that society now. Kids have a bit of a disconnect with nature. They don't get involved with as much, particularly kids who are living in urban environments. And it feels a little bit counterintuitive to create a tablet so they can get to know nature more. But, it's a means of educating them to get familiar with these things. So maybe when they're out on their occasional walk in the woods, that they might actually recognize things that they've come across. And also, it was a useful tool for teachers who may not have the resources to use this kind of fun way of getting to know plant life and things like that. So the process or the way this works is that the kids will go and collect the plants, identify them, but I'm not going to go into it that much because we have a video of it. Can I actually use that? Oh yeah, here we are. To show how it would work. Just fast forward into it a bit. So the kid locks in, they choose a character, accessorize it, put on some sunglasses. Kids love accessorizing characters. And then they go for a little walk in the area, or they check out the area. This is just showing the collaborative possibility. They have other classmates having a chat, interacting with them. And also down at the bottom, you can see there's different gamification aspects like hunger, energy, health, and levels that they're working on and building up. And obviously this is all a prototype. It was created within Figma, but a really, really nice visualization of what was possible. And then obviously we get into the map, we find our spot, go for a little walk, we find our mushroom, get a little bit of information, not a lot. Oh, I just got stung with a nettle. Oh, there's stuff about a nettle. Further on, we've got a dock leaf. And obviously these are kind of simple enough examples. We can see that dock leaves can help us after a sting. But when we go in further, we can go into our journal and we can learn some more information. So you go into your collection, you go, okay, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to learn a bit more about it. And also, if you quickly saw earlier on, there were tasks related to it. So the teachers could literally go, I want you to go out and find some of these now in the forest, or I want you to, and obviously these are basic examples or simple examples, but the application is really nice. They build it up, they get badges, they go up at different levels. And so that was a really, really nice project where the students really had some nice ideas. So I'm just wondering now, can I move on? I can. Another one was the classroom management tool. This was, they essentially wanted to work on something that could be used in the primary classroom that would help teachers meet the needs of undiagnosed and diagnosed children with ASD. And also, there is no real tool available at the moment that has universal design application. They looked at the environment. Originally, they were looking at tablets. Then they had a chat with some teachers. The teachers said, we don't have tablets for everybody all the time. So then they went, okay, what do classrooms have? Most of them have whiteboards. So they decided, okay, we'll have a go at trying to design some kind of an interface for whiteboards. So these are just examples of some of the solutions they come up with. One of them was a morning check-in. And they had this whole idea of creating an adventure. So you can see this visualization of an adventure. What are we doing today? They check in, they pick their profile, they just tap what mood they might be in. And so it allows the children to acknowledge their emotions, but also it kind of keeps it, everybody's the same. So there may be children with ASD, there may not, but we're getting a monitor of everybody. And the teacher can quickly get a general mood for the classroom and intervene if necessary. And this is kind of a visualization of what the teacher screen would be. And you can see, oh, everybody's pretty happy, so we're okay, we can go with the normal day. And then, other aspects of it. The whole idea of the adventure, the daily schedules along the top, so you can see what's happening where you are. And schedule is really, really important for people with ASD. They like structure, they like visibility, they like to see where they are. So, if you know where you are, even from that point of view of, oh, we're on English, what page are we on again? You can see it very easily. And also when it's done, it's ticked, I can move on. And one final aspect of their management tool was the idea of having a bit of democracy, some voting, a bit more fun there. Okay, we're having a break. What do you think? What will we do? We do some yoga, we do some dancing, or we do a bit of meditation or something. So they can vote, and it gives those children, movement breaks are very important for children with autism, but any child. they get stir crazy pretty quickly. So this gives them an opportunity to choose. So that was another idea that was developed by one of the groups. A third project that was developed was, and we can see here, good health and well-being and quality education were the targeted goals in this one. And it was the idea of an app. But what I thought was really interesting about this one is that it was aimed at retired people in the older community. This is definitely an under-resourced and under-targeted demographic, because I think a lot of times people would say they don't really know how to use phones that well. But this age is rapidly, I'm going towards that age. You know, a lot of us are going into that age. And so creating something for that, it makes perfect sense. And the idea of this was to create a platform to generate friendship, you know, because when people go into retirement, they've gone perhaps from a busy work environment, lots of social interactions, to reduced social interactions, a reduced sense of purpose, and loss of cognitive stimulation. And so what better way of doing that is in generating some kind of a platform that they can use to meet other people and avoid loneliness and cognitive decline. So things like community are targeted, so they can create buddy systems. Nature, really important for enhancing your positive well-being, uplifting your well-being. And so they looked at things like, obviously this is all theoretical, but a really nice idea about incorporating that aspect into it, where you'd have organized walks, we see swimming classes, hiking classes, you know, and if this was properly resourced and available, you know, you can imagine how lots of people would utilize this facility. Meaning and purpose, you know, the whole thing is based around a meaning and purpose. If you have a reason to get up in the morning, you are motivated, and this purpose can be lost in retirement. So you're making new friends, you're getting new hobbies, and the idea as well with this is that they're near you so that they don't have to travel far. And finally, obviously, activities that will motivate cognitive stimulation, like book clubs, watercolors, classes, etc. So theoretical, but a really nice idea. And, you know, they carried out some interviews with older people. And I do think it was a really good, valid project. The final project was a resource box for SNAs. They said SNAs could be teachers, not all classes have SNAs, but this was, I thought, a lovely idea. And again, this was targeted at sustainable cities and communities and reduced inequalities. And they had lots of ideas initially, but eventually landed on the idea of a resource box for SNAs to deal with refugees. Because it literally happened last year. They went from having normal classroom to lots of children coming in, and there were no resources, no information. And so the idea of creating this box that would give them some kind of tool to work with, even just as a talking point, because it can cause a divide in classrooms, and, you know. So this was the idea: Rory Cubes, Seeds, Doppel, Pictionary, art supplies, resources. They came up with all these and gave this to the SNAs to have a look at, and they got really, really positive feedback on it, to the point that they were like, you have to bring this to the government and get them to do it. And so that was the idea. And what was also really nice was that they looked at the reduction of waste and went, okay, we have an empty box at the end of it all to kind of bring the class together. Why don't we use it as a project? So turn it into a worry box and decorate it and cut a hole in it and, you know, put your problems in at the end. So really, really nice idea. This is a quote from one of the students from the SNA project. This project encapsulates everything we've been working towards since the beginning of our degree. It's very enjoyable to apply our psychological knowledge and research skills to address a contemporary issue. This was a fantastic learning experience, and I'm so proud of what we have produced. So really a ringing endorsement from the student. And a couple of other quotes there just at the end in relation to UN goals, because, you know, how does it work? I feel I'm more aware of the goals, and I would like to work on projects like this before. Again, it gave me a greater sense of awareness of equality issues and about practical steps to address them. And finally, I think a really important quote Knowing you are contributing a solution to a real problem was motivation. All of these problems are too large to solve as an individual, but now I feel we can make a difference on that level by breaking things down. And so that's the final, message. It's very difficult when it's a massive global problem, but if we can even solve a little problem in our local community or neighborhood, in a smaller area, and I think that was one of the best things about this project. Okay, thanks very much.
It's funny how with COVID and myself being part-time IADT, we missed so many things. It's opportunities like this that I've learned a lot about what Gronya's been doing in her teaching in the same department as me, and it dovetails with what I've been doing, but coming from a different direction. So people call me Ganesh. I teach at IADT, and my talk is on teaching and learning contextualized around kind of the technology and the engineering side of things. So design methodologies for solutions in sustainability and also resilience. A bit about the background. So these modules that I taught are not yet mainstreamed at IADT. They are electives that arise from a parent program, the Creative Media Technologies degree. A variety of different students took these electives, and they didn't come from CMT, and most of them were artists, designers, filmmakers, and psychologists. Of course, would have had design skills and designers as well. But in terms of formal engineering design background, they wouldn't have got this from IADT probably. But here are some examples on the right-hand side of projects that some students undertake in the kind of art and design area, involving biodiversity, reusable materials for sculpture, and they cover the top two pictures on the right, but also collages and visual communications to illustrate a sustainability theme, but using reusable materials as well. But my focus with the three modules that I taught was on the technical design and development aspects in a sustainability context, of course. But much work was much detailed research and development into the design of the modules involved the contextual studies into cities and communities and all those non-technical aspects. And I put my hands up. I wasn't really aware of the UN SDGs to a great extent at this point, and they didn't formally underpin what I did. But I'm fairly happy that they did actually ubiquitously form a great background to the modules. The first one I taught, Electronics for Sustainable Design, forgive me for using the same acronym ESD later on, in January 2020. This was taught wholly on campus to build and design methodology, build projects using reusable, recyclable materials with a circular economy approach. I taught some design methodology workshops with sustainability embedded, and I also taught electronics workshops with reusable components. And each of these three modules were taught on a 3-weekly in a 3-week block. And I'll be looking at those in a bit more detail in a few moments. Secondly, ETSC, Sustainable Cities, in Jan 21, wholly online. Technological projects wholly in the design sense, but now focusing on urban environments. We looked at 30 cities across the world. We looked at all the socio-economic, cultural, financial, creative aspects. We looked at smart cities and their technologies. And then I ran some design methodology workshops, and there were electronics demonstrations live online from a colleague out not far actually in Ishturk. In 22, Electronics Resilient Communities, a pivot to the rural sense, to look at geographical areas around the world where socio-economic difficulties are arising through war, through climate justice issues, through lack of housing, poverty, and food access. And again, it was to look at technological design methodologies, but then to build up projects, actually build them in the class using a platform called Arduino. And then I did, myself and a colleague, we taught, Brennan Kidney, we taught electronics workshops and examples. We took it forward. So the approach, to really summarize the approach to teaching, was a lot of contextualization of the non-technical elements, geographical, social, geopolitical and cultural, all the things that fit in with the UN SDGs. It's not only a coincidence that in 2021, ETSC had nearly 2 of the 3 weeks looking at these elements rather than the technologies themselves. Sustainability context design workshops where possible, cognizant of the fact that they're not necessarily engineering students, so don't want to overload them with that area. Practical electronics workshops where possible, presentation communication skills sessions, individual journal writing, and key to this, draft documentation and presentation 3 days before the end of the program, so that I can give them feedback before the final event of presentation and demonstration, followed by their journal submissions. Here's a design flow chart I used in ETSC. It's very simple. I didn't want to clutter it with iteration, or didn't want to put too much about the sustainability aspects, because they're really starting out on that design journey, many of them. But it is to identify a problem, the requirements, refine the solution, final solution with technological details, and present the whole journey. And in effect, there is an iterative path, but it comes from them appreciating that rather than seeing it up front. In ESD in 2020, I developed the flow chart you can see on the right, maybe difficult to see, but it was to, like with Gronia's module, a user identification, but to not a sophisticated level, understanding the user, but then embedding the environmental aspects and asking the students, what you're doing, is the activity, are the environmental impacts, are they measurable? Are they? Can they be reduced? Can you move to a life cycle approach of sustainability, a circular economy approach at all stages of the process with iteration here? And evidentially from the journals I received, they approached this design they started to consciously embed patterns in what they were doing, in their approach and their practice throughout the module, and that was really nice to see. In 2021 for ETSC, I gave this design exemplar for students to act as a template, and this is basically one I made up, but it's happening 8 years on. It's happening in India and places like that, where you've got weight sensors on buses to determine bus seats. Occupancy would have been handy during COVID, and a sustainability sense, it helps with to promote public transport usage. So they could use this template for their projects to develop a design around it. These are examples of the projects over the 3 years. An anemometer on the left with reusable parts, a dynamo and a electrical meter in the middle, a creative cultural bubble machine with for fun with the recycled parts, and on the right hand side a mock-up of the fires in forests in New South Wales, and a conceptual water pump, electrically powered water pump. In 2021, these students came up with the left-hand side, a group of them, with a very innovative design of embedding, not just for roads, not just solar panels by the side of the road, but actually putting in piezo transducers into the road, so that when the cars move along, the rumble of the vibrations generates electricity that then stored and then can be used to charge those same vehicles. What you do have is a complete circular energy path. The middle project was for automated distinguishing of different types of refuse, so general waste, and those that can be detected and recycled, such as plastics, metal, and possibly wood. On the right-hand side, a project involving air pollution levels in parts of the city, and then communicating to an app. For ERC, now looking at rural communities, the project on the left is a moisture sensor for areas that suffer from drought and flooding, and to check on the moisture levels to try and regulate the growth of the food growth and to survive, in fact, in a resilient sense. And then there's part of a system diagram in the middle. On the right, we have a carbon dioxide detector, and when level goes up a certain amount, the fan starts moving, which lowers the density of carbon monoxide and should reduce the toxicity in the air. On the back of this, in December 22, myself and Brendan Kidney, we're developing assets based on those 3 modules and more, very much involving the electronics practice as well, to teach the core areas of these 3 modules and more sustainability technologies. We do have 5 videos that are hot off the press, but they're not enough time to actually show you the videos. From the draft itself, there is, here's a carbon monoxide sensor on the left. And then we've got the moisture sensor connection and then the code that goes with it. And these are all things that are in the draft guide at the moment. On the left-hand side of this slide, we have a turbidity sensor that measures water quality and how it's used. And then top middle is the sensor connected to an Arduino through an intermediate device. Bottom middle is readouts from a moisture sensor. And over on the right-hand side, a moisture sensor and connection to put it into the soil of a plant. And including Gronya's great work in psychology, we have also Greenwig, run by our business colleagues. We have a top right, Visual Communications, who would develop in association with a campus-wide estates view of BER and carbon footprints questionnaires. Bottom right, Film EU's Sustainability Summit for Film and TV last year. And on the sorry, I'm getting my left and right mixed up. Bottom right, Fernhill Park, the Public Design Lab, an interactive augmented reality game for second level students to get and kids to get to know. CMT will no longer be running, but I do hope that there should be a home for these elective modules at IEDT in sustainability technology. But the ambition is to grow these modules within IEDT and possibly outside as well. Now, having completed the Education for Sustainability course that Mark and John talked about earlier, I would see this as part of a bigger picture to bring sustainability as a plan to the campus. I've been talking to a few people at the moment, but within this, I'd like to obviously bring in the UN SDGs and all of the great assets that were developed in that course that we can now use and underpin the approach in those 3 modules. And I'd like to see these modules then grown into a more substantial standalone offering. And that's everything I want to talk about. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Michelle, and I'm a lecturer here at ATU Galway. So this is one of our local cuckoos, and he arrived this year overnight on the 20th of April in North Clare. His journey took him from Africa's Congo Basin, taking either an eastern route through Italy or a western route through Spain. Now, the chances are our local guy came via Italy because survival rates on the western route have fallen dramatically. So I might not have imagined a few years ago that I would be taking my class of final year software and electronic engineering students for a walk outside around the campus to find and record birds. I might have thought that idea was a bit out there, that our lab times should wholly focus on the technical or other skills directly required by industry. But here we are. Well, actually, this is a DALI-inspired vision of what we looked like, because I didn't remember to take a proper photo on the day. We're all armed with our smartphones, and we're just using the regular voice recording apps on the phones. We're not bird experts, so we're also going to make use of some AI-powered bird ID apps, like one called Merlin from the Cornell lab. And actually, thank you to Ian O'Connor here at ATU Galway, who helped to verify that the bird song IDs that I'm going to be playing here for you today. Actually, if anyone would like to download the Merlin app, or if they have one on their phone already, then you could possibly test it out live, as I've got some more bird song coming up. You can always guess also. So what exactly is the problem? Well, biodiversity is the variety of life on Earth, and for many of us, this means nature. And biodiversity is in crisis. The World Wildlife Fund reports that it has declined by 69% since 1970. A good source of data for this is the Living Planet Index, which monitors the trends. And as of 2022, they include over 5,000 species. And this rate of decline is unprecedented in human history. Now, if you're a computer nerd like myself, 1970 also rings a bell, because January the 1st, 1970 is Unix time. And this is widely used in lots of programming languages as a reference point. So at least one recent study links technological change and the rise of technologies to a decline in the general nature connectedness of societies. And I think we heard a similar point from Grania in your talk earlier on. So here then are the SDGs, showing the biosphere as the foundation for economies and societies, and the basis for all the SDGs. And work at the Swiss Academy of Sciences shows that biodiversity is a common factor of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals and fundamental for achieving all the goals. So the biodiversity-focused SDGs then include number 15, life on land, while the general well-being-focused SDGs include number 3, good health and well-being. And the aim of this venture is to embrace both. So what then can software engineers and electronic engineers do? How can the technology designers and developers of the future positively impact biodiversity? Well, we can start by noticing the local birds. So one of the authors of this study on nature connectedness, which is quoted here, Carly Butler, actually presented to the participants on the Education for Sustainability module last year. That's the level 9 module with Mark, John, that John mentioned, with Mark, John and Dermot here at ATU. And this is one of many studies finding that higher levels of connectedness with nature benefits both people and the environment. But their study found that this connection needs to be active. So like watching or listening or photographing, as opposed to a more passive studying of nature or just, looking through windows. So our adventure started then at the center of the building in our computer lab, and we headed outside via the main entrance at the front and doing a clockwise loop around the campus. So I had a group of around 20. There was general enthusiasm and lots of people helped to volunteer usher. It was early February, very grey, and thankfully not raining at that particular moment. And 11:30 a.m., so it wasn't the most ideal time for birdsong. but we did manage to locate one starbird on top of one of the taller trees there at around 11 o'clock on the map. So I'm going to play that now if anyone wants to test out an app or even just try and guess. Anyone go first? Bird.
Finch.
Finch. Oh, close. Close. We have finches around. That one's actually a starling. So, yeah, starling. We've actually lots of birds sharing our campus with us. There are often sparrows near the Ballyban Road, house sparrows. And it is nice that we still have them because the sparrows have declined or disappeared from lots of other European cities. We also have this next bird year-round on campus, and this one I recorded more recently near the front entrance. Anyone want to give that one a go? Blackbird, yeah, well done, thank you. So some students then later on ventured further afield, and we heard recordings from around Galway, with Merlin Woods being a great source. Of course, we're not bird experts or ornithologists, so the bird ID apps do help, and this one just happens to also be called after the Merlin. Now, the image that you see behind the screenshot there in shades of orange is called a spectrogram. And this we create ourselves back in the labs using code, and it shows the frequencies that are present in the birdsong over time. So while we're not expected to become experts in birds on this particular program, we are expected to build our expertise in coding and algorithmic techniques and maths and stuff. So the module I did all this on is called Digital Signal Processing, or DSP, and it's quite a technical module and quite mathsy. And we use the WAV file recordings of the birdsong to learn about signal processing, and for the students then to use in a project that contributes to their overall grade on the module. So our tool of choice is a Jupyter Python notebook where we can interactively run code alongside presenting text and images. And for this, we use Google Colab. So this code here calculates and plots the spectrograms. And for example, the audio with the sparrows had a lot of traffic noise in the recording. So we could, if we wanted, remove this mathematically and in the process learn about frequency transforms and filter design. So I'm going to play a short bit of the original audio and then the audio after a digital high-pass filter is applied. In year 4, people are generally very busy and often focused on grades. So I do incentivize engagement with the birdsong aspects in the grading rubric for the project. Then, when the students had finished the project, I asked them if they would voluntarily complete a survey, and most of them kindly did. So one question asked how they feel about their future and sustainability. And we can see that about 40% chose worried, about 30% indifferent, and a relaxed 11%. In terms then of how important biodiversity is to people personally, 70% said that it is at least somewhat important to them personally. Then the students were asked to comment in their own words on how they feel about the biodiversity crisis. And the responses here range from indifference and even a general lack of awareness through to very worried. And for some, a feeling of a lack of control about their future. Like, what can they do? In terms then of how noticing nature increases people's personal sense of well-being, a vast majority self-reported a positive effect. On the other hand, results from my question about the project affecting people's empathy for bird life on Earth are perhaps slightly less encouraging. Still, a small majority did say that it had at least some effect. And this is a case where, on reflection, I wish I'd also included an open-ended question here, and I would do that if I was doing it again. And a majority did say that sustainability is something that they would like to learn more about. So that is where we're at. And I would like to leave the last word with our Robin friend here, who is in this moment, I imagine, channeling National Geographic photographer Frans Lanting, when he says that biodiversity starts in the distant past and it points toward the future. Thanks, everyone.
Hang on, we have one here.
Just with your last finding there, you're saying that it seems like the answer that half felt like it didn't have much of an effect on their empathy towards birds. But I just wonder, Generation Z and between Z and millennials tend to have quite a lot of empathy, and they're kind of much more aware of kind of the issues related to biodiversity than previous generations. So just even, I know you say you wish it an open question, but anecdotally from interacting with the students, how do you feel like their existing level of empathy or awareness of nature for doing the project?
Yeah, so I was actually surprised when I saw the survey results. Now, I had chatted to them closer to the time that we went outside and did all the bird recordings and stuff, and the survey was done a good bit later. And chatting to them, they were, there was lots of enthusiasm. And actually, I was inspired to write the question because one of the students said, "Oh, I have more empathy." That was her actual statement. "I have more empathy for the birds now than I ever did," sort of thing. So yeah, I wonder, is it my question, my timing?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be, too disheartened by it, but yeah.
No, but I wonder, did they not feel affected because they already felt like they'd empathy?
Yeah, perhaps. Perhaps.
Also,
but yeah.
Not caring can be a strategy against worry and stress as well.
Or as you said, they already felt that they had the empathy. So yeah. Thanks for that.